have two ways to change the color of the image that you're working with. My default is selecting my image. We know it's selected because it's got that box around it. And I will come up here to the fill option, and I'm going to choose a color to fill it. We will go over another option for you to change the color of this object later. The next item that we're going to talk about is the cursor. Just like as in any other program, when you have the arrow, that is considered a cursor. The cursor will know if you're trying to do any kind of command if you mouse over where you're at and you notice that the cursor changes. That is how you know whether or not the cursor is seeing the object that you're working with or not. In this case, I'm going to scale my image symmetrically, which means that I'm scaling the height and the width at the exact same time. Once I release the left click, then we go back to the regular cursor. The next tool that we're going to look at is the Select Shapes tool. I very rarely have ever used this because there are two other ways that you can select items, which to me are a lot quicker and more efficient than the Select Shapes tool. The next option that we have is to edit points. Frequently when you bring an image in from the internet, if you double click on it, you will see that you have all these little gray boxes. These are the lines and the curves in your image. We can clean up some of those lines and curves by using what I refer to as the Simplify tool. You will never get rid of all those gray boxes because there are lines and there are curves in your image. So you will continue to use this until you are satisfied with how your image looks. Once you are satisfied, you can click away and you'll see that your image is somewhat less jagged than it was before. If you're dissatisfied, you can double click on it again and you can continue to use that Simplify tool until you're completely satisfied. The next object we're going to look at is the Line tool. This merely creates lines and shapes if you're trying to freehand create within the Silhouette Design Studio. If I click on a line and I left click and hold, you see I have now created a line. Below the Line tool, you will see that you have preset drawing tools for certain shapes. Despite the fact that it looks like a rectangle and an oval, you can actually choose whatever shape you would like to choose. By clicking on that tool, you can come over here, left click and hold, and you see that I can either make it a square or a rectangle. We can also do this with our circle. You can left click and hold and drag a circle. You can do an oval. You can do whatever sort of ellipse shape that you want to do. Do not get bent around the axle if it's not 100% perfect. We can go in and manipulate the size to make it the exact size that you need. Below that tool is another tool that comes with the Design Plus. It's just more shape options available for you, so you wouldn't have to freehand create those particular shapes. Below your Shapes tool, you also have the Freehand Tools, once again, that can be used if you are trying to freehand design or create in your design studio. An example would be to just grab your pen, and once again, you see that you can use that to draw whatever shape you choose. If you are dissatisfied, you can always hit the undo button, and that will undo your last steps. One of the most frequently used tools is your text box. Your text box is what you are required to do in order to type text into your image. So in this case, we're going to type Amanda. Oops, just kidding. And you see that now it is inside of a green box. This green box lets you know that it still thinks that you're typing an image. When you are done typing, you can click away from it and you notice the green box disappears. Now if you click on it again, you see that it's giving us the shape and parameters that it is inside of. If you want to continue to type, if you double click on it, you see you get that green box back. Another neat feature is this right here. If you left click and hold, you'll notice that it turns orange and you can drag your image to a shape and bend it around that shape. See how it's bending around the Cricut logo. If I brought it over here to the square, if the square was big enough, it would actually align to that square and it's aligning to the circle. Release the left click. While it still has a green box around it, you can also change the distance that it is from that particular image that you brought it to or dragged it around. Once you click away from it, it will stay in that configuration as long as what I refer to as the magnet is still there. If you were to remove the magnet, notice how it goes back to normal. I'll show you how you can keep it in that configuration in another knowledge nugget tip. Under here you have the sticky notes. I frequently use sticky notes because once you have made the compound path or grouped any font or anything like that, you will no longer be able to see what font you used. It's important to know that font because if you're hustling and you're making something for someone else and they want it in that same font, it takes out the guesswork. So in this case, the font that I was using might be Arial. If that's the case, I would just put Arial. This way I have it for future reference. Right here you have the erase tool. If you click on the eraser, just like you would have an eraser when you were in kindergarten, if you left click and hold and drag through your image, it will erase whatever is in its path. If you decide that you don't want it that way or you're dissatisfied with what you did, hit the undo and it'll go back to the step prior to that. Notice that your tool stays in that tool configuration until you go back and you select the cursor. Our next tool that we're going to look at is your knife tool. The knife tool is used to cut away certain objects from other objects. Let's just say in this example that I want the cricket's antennae to be a different color. If you look and I zoom in, you'll see that I left clicked and held my mouse, and now you see I have separated the antenna from the cricket itself. Now, if I wanted to change the color of the antenna, I am able to do so. We'll choose blue and red in this example. Now understand that Silhouette sees these as three different objects and not one solid object any longer. It's important to remember that because it will not move together. In order to get it to group back together after you've done that manipulation, you're going to want to left click and hold and drag a box around your image. Notice how there's a box around this image, a box around this image, a box around this image, and all of these boxes are within a larger box. This is telling the Silhouette that you are going to give this command to everything that's inside of this larger box. So you will right click and you will group. That now puts our image back together so we can move it around as a whole again.